Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. This video is a work in progress on several pieces of terrain. Customer ordered all the ruin pieces actually that I provide, the Chipstone ruins, the chapel ruins, as well as the ruin tower. And he's playing Infinity, which is a very cover-dependent game. If you're not familiar with Infinity, it's a skirmish-style game set in the near future, or the far future. I'm not sure the exact time period, but because it's skirmish level, it's cover dependent with a lot of, and I don't play Infinity, but I have paid a little attention to the mechanics of it, where there are reactions to characters moving and things like that, I believe. So these pieces actually provide a nice foundation for a game like Infinity, but are a little out of the time period. So what this customer has done is request that they sort of represent an archaeological dig, and that allowed me to add sort of soil elements to it that could enhance cover in some areas, reduce cover in some areas, and sort of fit it into that concept. It's been a little bit of a journey for me in terms of how to modify that sort of soil accumulation, and I've come up with something a little different than I've done in the past that I think will fit that kind of a theme pretty well, actually. So let's take a closer look at them and I'll explain how I've developed them over time and what kinds of features I think they represent for the game. So this is an overview of, we'll go from smallest to biggest. This is the small Chipstone ruin that I recently released, sort of recently, it's been a little while now. And it's a relatively low standing piece, so the walls are, not terribly high. And you can notice I've primed it, and then all of a sudden I've done work over it. I actually, started to think I was finished with these pieces, getting them ready for paint and other things. And I realized, no, they needed more work, of course. So what I did is I wanted to emulate the thought that they've been being excavated, are nearly finished, but still have some representative areas that have yet to be uncovered. I started building up these as a sort of smooth slope, and I realized that a smooth slope doesn't really represent archaeological work. So what I did is I went back over and I kept additionally building them up, these soil areas, and adding in a sort of terraced look. If you've ever seen archaeological digs, I know this does not accurately represent an archaeological dig before anybody comments on that. Normally they would lay out, at least in our time period, they'd lay out a grid pattern, excavate it by grid, all of that. But of course I'm not going to do that for these pieces. But what I wanted to do was sort of represent them carefully digging out layers of the soil as they reveal the piece, which sort of represents that concept, I think, a little bit better than the gradual slopes that I had. So I gradually built up these pieces, actually over several days. This material is sculpt mold. I've talked a little bit about it in the past, in some previous videos, probably really old videos. But it's a paper mache type material that is fairly friendly to sculpting. And as you can see here, I've tried to build up the center area to the same height as the outside walls to provide sort of an additional cover place, so that if miniatures were on this side and line of firing was over here, that would at least provide a little bit of cover. In fact, let's get Sir Tippy McLean. And Infinity models are 28 millimeter, I believe. They're just a little bit slender and smaller than some of the hero scale miniatures, but you can see here that depending on where a miniature is, that is going to provide some cover for them, which was a major goal for me in modifying these pieces. Then I went around and built up some areas on the outside to give that, of course, that unfinished look, and that is sort of how the small chipped ruin came out. And so here you see the small chapel ruin, and you may notice right away that there's been some modifications to it. The customer requested that the chapel ruins somehow integrate with the large round ruin, which I'll show you in a few minutes. so that he could place them adjacent to it and give the sense that it's a larger overall structure that's been ruined, of course, but also be able to place them independently to give some table variation. So what I did is I built up some circular areas around the side to give the impression that this was a larger circular structure that surrounded the tower ruins, and then did some very careful chipping. Now, I have really come to the decision that the chips on these kinds of ruins really need to be to scale. Frequently, when you just strike these kinds of plaster blocks, what you end up with is a large cleave that looks really out of scale. So what I do is I actually take a screwdriver and a hammer, and I actually extremely carefully chisel out individual pieces on these blocks. It takes a little bit of time. I feel like a marble sculptor when I'm doing that, but I think it produces a much more realistic sense of ruin on these kinds of pieces, and I think it's worthwhile for the overall effect. So you can tell again, I started sanding this. I thought I was done, and then I decided no, I'm not done. So I started building up additional areas as well to give that sense of soil is being removed gradually as the ruin is being revealed. I did some modified flooring in here, and actually I did a lot of work that's now covered, but when you're doing a piece like this, you never know what's going to happen as you build it up. At least I don't. It's a very organic process for me, so I try to add in as much detail as I can. I actually think there's some flooring under here, and then I don't worry about the work I've done. I'm not afraid to go back over it and cover it up if I feel like the overall feel of the piece is enhanced at the end. So what you can see here is that I decided to terrace these, which I think actually works better for the archaeological feel, and also provides me an opportunity to place some new pieces, some new spaces that miniatures could stand to take cover and to deliver fire to other areas of the table. And I really like that, as, if this was actually on the ground level, of course he's not going to have a line of sight, but by building up these terraced areas, it provides another Mr. Tippy McLean, hence his name. But it provides additional and modified cover. Additionally, building out these round walls provides some extra space for cover as well on this piece, rather than just having the central ruin here, which represents a little bit more what the original piece looks like. So that gives you a sense of what the small chapel ruin looks like. And again, I've really tried to build up some of that soil to give it more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? An in-process dig. Now, one of the things I'd actually like to cover it more with additional soil, but I've spent a ridiculous amount of time doing this as it is. I've built this up over 3 or 4 layers, each time looking at it and saying, no, it's not right, and adding more. But of course, because of the base size, I don't want to create vertical cliff faces on this, so that restricts the overall amount of sort of excavated soil that I can add to it. But that's fine. I think I can still capture that overall feel with the amount that I've put on. So here you can see the large chipstone ruin, and for those people, I forgot to mention it with the smaller one, these are cast in solid resin based on Herstart's molds, and as you can see, this one also started to prime and then realized, no, I really want to do more work on it. But you can see here that I've taken advantage of the larger space on the base. This is one of the reasons why it left a fairly large lip around this one, so that there was space to model different kinds of features or vegetation on it. And of course, because it's got a thin profile, it could be trimmed off if somebody didn't want to use that. But I took advantage of the large space here and actually covered up quite a bit of the detail just to build up a really large pile of soil that I thought would, kind of give a little bit better impression that, there's some excavation being done, and perhaps this piece is a little less finished than some of the others. And of course, you can see I've added in a few piles in the interior, and in fact, when I go to coat these, I'm going to do this with a very, very fine sand because I don't want to obscure a lot of this detail, so I'm going to be looking for a very light coat of PVA, a very light coat of sand, but I'll be scattering some of that sand in the interior to try to blend, not to try, I should be able to blend these areas into the stonework in and amongst the ruins. So that gives you a look at the large chipstone ruin. And here you see the large chapel ruin. And again, this has been modified so that I've got these extending curved walls. And again, I'll show you all these pieces in some sort of, adjacent to each other in just a minute. But again, built up some of that soil. I wanted to take this corner and really build it up a little bit higher so that it would change the line of sight cover for models on this side, or I guess on the other. And again, just try to add some areas where it's piled quite high to give it a look like it is under excavation, as I mentioned before. And I did modify the floor. I like this much better than the original flooring I was using. So I broke up a bunch of those, inserted those. Actually, there were several that were done under here as well. And as I mentioned, I'm not afraid to cover up detail as I progress on a piece. And some of that detailed chipping on the exposed rock surfaces, I should say the building surfaces. So that gives you a sense of what this piece looks like. And here you see the large tower ruins. Now this is an interesting piece. It provides, quite a bit of space to add in some of that soil. And actually, this provides a very useful opportunity to do some reinforcing on this piece. Because of the way this piece is built, hand block by block, this provides some, or produces, I should say, some rather fragile joins. These sections in here in particular are quite subject to breakage during shipping, and to be fair, I have yet to ship one of these pieces successfully. And that was a major concern. I was going to pull it from the site. The customer wanted this piece, however. We will be traveling overseas, and I gave it some thought and realized that if I reinforce some of these unions, I have an improved way of sealing the stone based on another viewer's suggestion by diluting some PVA into the paint for the first base coat to seep into the pores of the plaster and fill all the cracks in the joins. And having reviewed a video on somebody excuse me, shipping extremely fragile glass art, basically using a system of using cushion foam, interior, exterior, all around it to protect it from jarring, I feel like I have a shot at this one. So I've taken quite a bit of opportunity to add in large piles of soil where I could to provide line of sight alterations along the side of it, platforms for miniatures to sit up on, and even added a little bit along some of the tops of some of these pieces, which will help to strengthen some of these joins as well. And when I go to finish this, I will be adding quite a bit of dirt into some of these areas on the top, particularly along this area, which is one of the most fragile pieces here. You can see I added some Sculptamold here to reinforce it, as well as extending this line out so I could join this, which I haven't normally done in the past, to this pillar here, and then Sculptamolded that in to try to reinforce it. So I've added a considerable amount of structural strength to these sections of the building, which I think will help in addition to the packing method that I will be trying for this. One of the other requests that the customer had, and not shown, is the stairway, which will be coming up here, is the customer wanted a larger platform on the top that a miniature could stand on and fire from, as well as receive some cover. So what I did, which deviates a little bit from the previous versions I've done, is to add an extension off of this platform where the stairs would normally end, and then to build up this pillar significantly higher so I could add some blocks here that would provide some cover, at least from a few directions or a partial direction for miniatures that want to take that, let's call it a sniper position. The last thing to mention on this piece is that there is going to be an addition to this piece, which I have yet to begin, but the customer would like, oh, that's interesting, I hadn't thought about this sticking out. Well, okay. Why? Sometimes things occur to me as I'm looking at it myself. The customer would like to have a Stargate-styled portal that will be an optional insert into the interior of the ruins that will sit in the circular disc here. So as you can see, I've left this disc completely void of any real texture or rubble so that the Stargate will fit into this smoothly. And the Stargate will, it hasn't been decided on, at least by my part, on the final dimensions, but I expect it to be, something like this in size with stairs that will rise up to an upper platform. So that's something that will be coming down the future, and that explains some of the missing debris in the interior, as I really want to provide some space, even if I have it facing this way, which would look kind of nice with the large entrances here, then I could even have some space here to have a couple stairs descending to sit onto the floor in that spot. So that's in the works in the planning stage, and of course I'll visit that when I have it in some work in progress and final stages. So this is a large arrangement of pieces, so I'll just try to give you a little bit of an aerial overview of how I envision them fitting together. So my idea was to have this piece with the large chapel ruins be able to butt up reasonably well. These tolerances here between the bases is not perfect, but it's relatively close. And then so that this entranceway here sort of mimics and mirrors the central large arch here, and then have the small chapel entering these archways here and having the doorway there coming in. And as you can see now, what I've done is create this circular arc that will join up with this piece, join, and it will give the impression, at least in my mind, of creating this, that there used to be a large circular enclosure that wrapped around the central tower. And so that, I think, does a fairly decent job of tying these pieces in together and kind of giving them some plausibility, but allowing you also to place it in, whatever setting that you want, so that you have some real playable variations as well. So that gives you a look at all the ruined pieces. So that gives you a look at the ruined pieces and how they all sort of integrate and have been modified to hopefully capture a slightly different feel than the way they've been traditionally finished. I will be leaving most of those soil areas more exposed than I normally would to reflect that they've been recently cleared. I may put in just a couple little scrubby clumps of grass to show that, as the work has been progressing, vegetation has been taking advantage of the newly exposed soil, but it will be very sparse to be sure. And this is really a check-in for the customer as well before I progress to the priming stage, just to make sure that the amount of built-up soil around these structures is appropriate. More could be added, but it begins to crowd some of the interior spaces and reduce some of the amount of miniature playability inside of them, but adds to their realism. And of course, actually, because the Sculptamold is a relatively light in terms of density plaster when it finishes, some of that soil could be removed should the customer feel that it's a little bit too much. So I'll be looking for some feedback on that, and of course once I have them painted, of course I'll be coming back to show you that, as well as the Stargate, and I have hopefully some special plans for that piece that will hopefully take it to the nether. It'll take it to the netherworld. It will take it another step up, I think is what I was trying to say. But I don't want to talk about that until I move along with that piece and explore some of those options. So hopefully you'll stay tuned to the channel for these updates in the near future. And as always, questions and comments down below, always welcome. Sometimes it takes me a few days to get back to them and answer most of them, but don't despair. I do check on them fairly regularly, and I really appreciate them. A lot of great suggestions from viewers and a lot of positive feedback, and it's really motivating for me. So I appreciate that, and I will talk to you soon.